What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the BREWtally Speaking Podcast. I am one of your hosts, John, and with me, as always, is Daniel Terry. How are you doing on this evening?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. I'm happy for you. We finally we were able to pull somebody from the body count camp onto the show.
Yes, it was not Ice-T, who I have been courting for probably 2 years now. It is one of those things where Body Count, since they have come back with Bloodlust, has been a band. It's right around the time I started the podcast, and I was like, man, it'd be really dope to get Ice-T on, for obvious reasons. I mean, the dude's a living legend in both the hip-hop and, hardcore community. But I think, if you follow him on Twitter, he's one of the best follows on Twitter ever, because, people will come at him, and he'll just be like, oh, you won the Dumb Motherfucker of the Day award, or whatever. He just pulls no punches, calls people out. Indirectly, he is kind of a troll, but he's 100% himself, and I think that has always oozed over into his music. Love it or hate it. It is unapologetically what it is. But we didn't get Ice-T. We got Ernie C, the motherfucker himself, the lead guitar player of Body Count, the OG from Body Count. If you haven't been listening to the last couple of Body Count records, the last 3 that they've done since they kind of came back, I don't know what the fuck you're doing with your life. These things are instant classics, basically, when they drop.
They're massive. And I wasn't even that big of a fan of the old material. Not that I hated it, I just wasn't that familiar with it. So I jumped on with Body Count in their most recent material, and it is, number one, way better than I was expecting, if I'm being perfectly honest. But yeah, dude, they I'm basically a Body Count post hiatus. So Manslaughter, Bloodlust, Carnivore, that's it.
Dude, something, and I know I kind of touched on it a little bit in the interview, but something that I find really interesting about the band is I just kind of said, they're unapologetically them. And something that I find so funny is, the title track off of Carnivore, anybody else who has that noise in the background of that song, fucking hokey as shit. It's not cool, but you hear that in this Body Count thing with Ice-T's backing vocals and just that hard ass guitar riff, and you're just like, yeah, dude, all of this, just give me more. It's almost like the best B movie at that point. Even the pseudo fights or the kind of skits kind of going on in some songs. I'm thinking of Ski Mask Way when Ice-T does the hold up and he's like, that's your bitch, grab his bitch, wait over here, no, I will not shoot you, I'm gonna shoot the bitch, open the motherfucking safe now, motherfucker. And he's basically doing a whole robbery scene in the middle of the bridge. And it's just one of those that it's anywhere else it'd probably be hokey as shit, but somehow it works and adds to the whole thing that is Body Count. So I'm on board for all of it. It's all fucking great, personally.
Definitely have become a big fan. I think mostly just from talking to you, John. I mean, it's one of those man, if you haven't checked out Body Count, I mean, what are you doing with your life? Which I think is something you said to me one night during a drunken conversation. And I was like, honestly, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I mean, up to this point. But yeah, no, I definitely have gotten a huge kick out of these. It's funny too. It's the first time I even heard Ice-T was on a. It was on a 6 Feet Under song called One Bullet Left, and I remember thinking that was the best song on the record. So Body Count just makes so much sense to me as far as I liked the heavy guitars, and I liked the metal sound, but then I liked this just crazy dude just going on and on and on about death and all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, wow, okay. I don't like 6 Feet Under, but it sounds like Body Count's probably gonna be my cup of tea, no pun intended.
Well, I think the interesting thing, and I'm not gonna let props on that pun.
Yeah, I try. I'm a dad. I can do this.
One of the things to me that I've loved about Body Count too is, even amongst some of the sillier things that they do, it's all rooted in very politically conscious things. Something that was kind of interesting about Carnivore is, Ice kind of tackles, still police brutality and all that kind of stuff, and racial injustice. And, he makes the comment in one of the songs that he's been rapping about this or been talking about this on the last record and the record before that, I'm thinking of Black Hoodie off the last record, and it's he's and even Cop Killer, going all the way back to one of their first records. It's they have been talking about the social injustices that people of color have been enduring at the hands of police for almost 3 decades now. And it's like, at what point some people, like, I read a comment, and again, Ice just shut this person fucking down, but he was just like, someone was just like, oh, we get it, like, intolerance or whatever, and it was just like, no, like, he was like, why don't you just shut the fuck up? And he was just like, I will when it stops happening all the time.
Right.
And you're just like, ding, 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 there you go. But Ernie's got fucking stories too. Like, I mean, I listened to a lot of Ice, and I really fell into Ice as a person and as a intellectual being on his podcast, the Final Level podcast. And there's just so many great nuggets in that. Interviewing up and coming hip hop artists. Having people like Jamie Josta on, delving into the his old life and stuff like that. And it was kind of fun doing that with Ernie. I mean, like, getting to talk about, I found it infinitely interesting that, he makes the comment when I go, did you guys get a lot of shit for Cop Killer initially? Like, obviously initially, but like, and then he's like, well, no, we were playing it for almost a year and no one gave a fuck. And it's like, that's so fucking wild that, like, for a year you motherfuckers was playing this thing and no one said shit. But as soon as you release it, and he goes, and the label was like, oh, we're worried about the song Mama's Gotta Die Tonight. And I was just like, that's funny.
That is kind of funny. I mean, it's one of those, like, you try to predict how things are going to go over. But yeah, I think it's all exposure too. Back then you have to understand it takes a little bit longer for a controversy to erupt. It's pre-Twitter, it's
everything,
all of that stuff. So, people have to, number one, hear about the band, hear the record, specifically target that song. Out of, let's be honest, a record filled with offensive content. Like, how do you take a record like that and decide this song, this is the one that I'm offended by? Like, I've always felt that way about metal in general, that, like, you have to be a certain kind of person to be on board anyway.
Yeah.
So then you're hearing all these normal people that are listening to it thinking like, oh my God, I can't believe that man said that. He sounds very angry and he's talking about killing cops. And it's like, I don't know. I never really took offense to it. I mean, it wasn't my thing at the time, growing up in a religious sheltered environment. Cop Killer was definitely not playing around me too often. But, it's funny too, because whenever I finally heard the song, it had been so built up to me, being this, oh my God, I can't believe that they did this, or, on one side, or some people being like, I think it's really great that they did it, and I heard it and I was like, oh yeah, cool. I'm not offended at all, and I totally understand, like, why they wrote that song, like, you know what I mean? Like, it never really, I don't know, it never really hit me the way it seemed to have hit everybody else, like, to where people were petitioning for the record label to drop them over it. Like, come on.
Yeah, they were different times back then in the late 80s and early 90s. All of that aside, let's get into my conversation with Ernie C of Body Count, and we will talk to you after that. So I had the pleasure this early afternoon talking to Ernie C, legendary guitarist for Body Count, whose latest album, Carnivore, is out now via Century Media Records. First of all, congratulations on a fucking killer record, another instant classic in the BC catalog. It seems like Carnivore has really piggybacked off of the success and the vibes of Manslaughter and Bloodlust. I don't know if that was kind of a conscious effort on the band's part to kind of create this, I'll call it a trilogy for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm. No, it wasn't at all. It's just the progression of the band. If you listen to our records from 27 years ago, it's every record has, progressed further than the next record. So I think this is just a natural progression. It's our third album working with Will Putney. He's great. We love him to death. So, we're going to, we'll do another one, hopefully, and it'll be better than this one. But right now, this is the best we have.
So that was actually something I was going to get to in a little bit, but since you already brought it up, Will seems to kind of just add this X factor to the band and bringing out the best in all of you. What is it about Will that has allowed that to happen, seemingly, on all these last three records?
Well, first, he's like a member of the band, and second of all, we like him. He's easy to work with, and he's a guitar player. We like, the idea that he's a guitar player, so he can add guitar parts. And, Body Count is a guitar-dominated band anyway, so, and he works well with Ice, and he's the right fit at the right time, and just what we needed to get to this point. I don't think without him we wouldn't be where we are. The band, every piece of the band right now works fine. Everyone is towing their weight.
What is, you've done 3 albums with him. What is kind of a fond memory you've had of working with Will, where you kind of, just kind of a fun behind the scenes kind of thing of making, it doesn't necessarily have to be this record, any of the records really?
Well, Will is just, he has a dry sense of humor. He's different from us. He grew up on the East Coast. We grew up in South Central. So, it's such a different contrast. It works fine. But I remember the first thing when we first started working with him, he was talking about analog tape, and he says, "You guys used to record on analog. It must have took you guys all year to do a record." And I was just like, "Okay, this is cute." Whenever I'm lost for words, I was like, "Oh, that's cute." So anyway, that's what I remember about Will. He's Mr. Technology. He's a producer of today. You know what I mean? We needed someone like him instead of working with someone from our past of our age, because they'll get the same viewpoint that we would have. So working with Will, he's younger. He has a different viewpoint. So and we're real flexible. We're like not so ego driven that we're able to listen.
Absolutely. That's actually something I didn't necessarily think of, but since you bring it up, is kind of an interesting tangent maybe to explore. When you guys were getting ready to come back with Manslaughter, who were some of the producers that you were looking at? Because it had been so long since you had recorded a record, and the style and the recording processes had kind of gone through a couple of different changes since then. So when you were looking at producers, who were some of the other names maybe that you were looking at, and were you kind of focused on looking at what the current state of metal producers was? Because at the time, Will wasn't necessarily who he has become over the last handful of years.
No, we were just looking for a producer. And the record company at the time was Sumerian, gave us a bunch of names to check out. And we listened to some records and this and that. And one of the records, I listened to one of Will's records, I can't remember what it was. There's something about it that caught my ear. And then we met him. I was like, he's humble enough, and he's young enough, and he's not, he doesn't have I'm the kind of attitude. And I said, that's the guy right there, because I've been a record producer myself, so I know what it takes. So I just said, okay, if somebody's going to steer this ship, I would like this dude doing it right here.
There's a lot of interesting guitar tones on this record, and as a shitty guitar player myself, I was kind of instantly drawn to even like your Ace of Spades cover, and I think it's Bum Rush kind of has that same kind of guitar tone on those 2 tracks. And there's a lot of interesting guitar tones where it's not just any specific one throughout the whole record, but kind of fits the vibe of whatever the song is asking for. Are you someone who constantly is playing around with your tone and kind of figuring out how to get the, different sounds out of it to kind of create different textures and stuff for a record? Or is that something, again, that kind of Will plays around with and helps with?
That's something Will plays around with. A lot of those guitar parts, Will played some of them. I played some of them. Juan played some of them. The guitar solo on Color, someone else did that. It's like it's like we're trying to make a good record. I don't care how we get to that point of it being a good record. I don't, if Will's there in the studio late at night, because he's in Jersey, I'm in LA, if he experiments around and comes out with something that's really cool and we listen to it, it works right, I have no problem with that. That comes from years of being a guitar player. When I was younger, it was just like, I got to do it. I'm going to fly out there and play it. I'm going to play that A note, because you can't play an A note the way I can play an A note. So right now it's just like whatever works. And, we trust him. And when we listen to the finished product, it came out really good.
Are you someone who is still kind of more tactile gear, like I need my head, I need my cab, this is how I play my stuff? Or are you kind of more adopting of, Kempers and things like that and kind of doing things to make it a lot easier on yourself to kind of have all these things without having to lug a shitload of gear with you?
I have a Kemper. I have a couple of Kempers, but I still, when I play live, we still play through 5150s. But they're simple. Actually, you don't have to. Lugging around gear is not a problem. It's just 2 heads or 3 heads in an anvil case. That's not the problem. The problem is when the Kemper blows out and I really don't know which button to push to get this thing to work. So when the amp blows out, I can say, okay, it blew a fuse, it blew a master tube. It's real simple. When a Kemper goes out, I've seen people like, their whole sound system is out. The monitor man doesn't know what to do. The guy doing the in-ear's got to figure something else out. So we try to keep it as simple as possible, even though it seems complicated.
It's not necessarily that it seems complicated. I just think that a lot of people now, especially for a band like you guys who do a lot of fly dates, that, having a Kemper provides a consistency that maybe you may not be able to get when you're having to use rental gear and hoping and praying that if you're using, a 5150, that they have a 5150 and you're not getting something else because somebody else rented it already.
Exactly. Good. We on dates that we fly on, we have the Kempers. We haven't used them yet because the 5150s that we get, we've been with the company, years and years. So we usually get what we want on these dates, So, and they usually give us, like, if they happen to have 4 of them, like we go to Europe, we might not bring ours. Sometimes we don't bring them. And then we get there, we try them all out and they all work and they keep the other one. So right now it's working, but later on we might use the Kempers, but it comes with like another set of problems and that we really don't want to deal with right now.
It is shocking to see a band when their whole rig is basically set up to, be to a click track, be, on a time sensitive loop of tracks and so forth. And then when there's a singular problem, it affects the entire show. Whereas, like you're saying, I'm kind of more of the old school vibe of, like, when you go to a show and someone's head blows up, it's like, hey, can I borrow someone else's or whatever? Or they figure it out pretty quickly. And it's kind of interesting just to watch a whole production come to a screeching halt because one thing is now down.
What made me understand this more, when I first started playing, I played through a 30-space rack-mounted amp. And that was my sound. I had a preamp, a power amp, H3000, a digital delay, compressors. This was like a whole elaborate kind of deal just to get the sound of a guitar. So we played in Europe, and the first gig there, they plugged my stuff into 220, and it fried everything, my whole, my whole rack. So I went through this whole tour just playing with a wah, A/B switch, volume up, volume down for leads, and that was it. I played maybe a Phase 90, Jimmy Dunlap's Phase 90. I played the whole tour with that, and it worked. And that made me say to myself, you don't have to be so complicated to get the sound out. Because I used to play in stereo, and one day, I just play on stage in stereo. And my sound man came to me one day and says, Ernie, you're the only person that knows you're playing in stereo. So I quit doing that. So I try to keep it as simple as possible.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Sometimes, I'll go through these phases where I'm like, all I need is a decent head and a good cab and,
right.
The guitar. And then sometimes, I'll listen to something and it's just, lots of effects and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, it'd be so nice to be able to make these like crazy layered guitar parts and all this kind of stuff. But then I'm just like, but at the end of the day, if you can't, it's like, I'm thinking of, The Edge from U2 when they were, I think the documentary was, it might get louder or whatever. And he goes, if you took away these 3 pedals, this is all I'm playing. And he showed you like what it sounds like as he plays it. And then when he took away all the effects, it's just like the most mundane, simple strummed chord. And you're like, Jesus Christ, you really are just hiding behind those effects.
Exactly. Dallas is guitar tech. The guitar tech has a guitar tech. That's how elaborate his setup is. It's like you got to carry around 2 people just to work the sound that you're getting. So, I like the Edge. I like that. I like that the concept of that idea, just having a bunch of stuff. And because that's where I thought I was going to be. My first record, I used all kind of extra effects that I couldn't pull off on stage, but even though the record was real punkish. But right now, I just kind of keep it really simple now. It's my floorboard and the amps and the guitars with no volumes, just an on-off switch on the guitar, and that's it.
It's kind of going back a little bit to the records themselves. It seems like, you guys, especially lately, it's about every 2 years or so you guys have a new record coming out. And, I often hear, and in doing this for a couple of years now, everyone's always like, oh, we went into the record with about, 30 songs or at least 30 song ideas, came out with 12. And, you always go like, well, what happens to the other 20 some odd songs that didn't do anything? Like, do you keep those just in a bank? Are you like working on them eventually? So, I don't really hear too much about that process with you guys. Is what ends up on the record solely what's been recorded, or are there essentially B-sides, I guess, at this point, or extra tracks that haven't been finished or released yet?
I think there's going to be B-sides on this record, because there was some stuff that we wanted every song on this record to be, have a certain consistency to them. And there were some songs that we thought that didn't. But we're still working them. They probably will be B-sides, And for the most part, what we write, we write for the record, because we get together to write for the record. We're not a band that writes all the time and everybody comes and writes. And, when we get together, we're doing a record for the most part. When we say this 3 months of time is going to be spent doing a record, that's what this 3 months of time is going to be spent doing.
Something that's kind of interesting too on this record is some of Ice's, and I know there's some of you do backing vocals too, and it's kind of a little hard to differentiate who's doing what, but I think there's a couple of songs like what is the it's always the fun now of having everything on your phone or on a record, and you can't actually look at what the song titles are anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the song with Amy Lee. I'm trying to think of what that song is.
Okay.
When I'm Gone.
When I'm Gone, uh-huh.
Yeah. Is that Ice doing the chorus vocal?
Yeah, that's him doing it, but Amy's doing it also.
Right. Okay, but that was kind of my point is, Ice on this record, I think vocally, it kind of is showing some new tricks and some vocal chops that I've not really heard on any of the last couple of Body Count records. And, I'm kind of wondering, are you guys pushing him to kind of try things differently vocally, or is that kind of something that he is kind of experimenting with on his own? Because he's a different kind of vocalist, so sometimes when you hear the music, he's not going to approach it lyrically or vocally like most people would in the scene that you guys are in.
No, we on our third record, he sang some stuff on the third record that we did. He did that. He can hold a note. He's been doing this for a long time. He can hold a note. But this time he just tried something different. The song lended for him to do that, and Will pushed him to do it. So it came out good.
I guess. It is always funny. I think if you're referring to, what is it, Violent Demise, I think was the third record?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't remember what song it was he sang on, but I remember we had him sing on that record. And he held a note.
It's just always funny kind of thinking about your band, because I feel like there's sort of, like 3 or 4 phases of it. Obviously everyone remembers, Cop Killer and all that kind of stuff, and that was
right.
92. I mean, I was still living out on the East Coast at that point.
Right.
So.
And actually, we were out playing the song in 1990. We're out playing in 90 and 91 before that even came out.
Well, I guess that's a good question, because I think it's still, oddly enough, I still think it's kind of hard sometimes to find it, on streaming services and so forth, or you have to kind of go an alternate route to find it. If you guys were playing it that far before it was released on a record, was there much backlash even like back then, or do you really think it was just kind of the time of 1992 when that came out and the things that were happening culturally that really made it more significant in a pop culture sense?
It was pop culture. I mean, we played that song on Lollapalooza the year before. We played it in 1990 on Lollapalooza before it was even out on a record. So it didn't catch nothing, And when the record company, when we released it on Warner Brothers, they were more worried about Mama's Gotta Die Tonight. They were like, we got a song about chopping up your mama. Oh no, this isn't going to fly. That caught them blindsided. You know what I mean? The only thing we were going to name the record Cop Killer. They were just like, you can't name a record Cop Killer. We can't sell it. We can't put it in stores with the front being Cop Killer. So, we just left it Body Count or whatever, just Body Count by itself. But other than that, it didn't catch anything. But election year politics came into the play. So that's what happened with that song, and with that. That's how that got so out of control.
Out of curiosity, how hard has it been, given the fact that you're a multi-decade band? Like you've existed in the metal scene in completely different facets. Back in the early 90s, you're kind of in the beginning of grunge and more of the kind of death metal coming out. Mm-hmm. And then
actually, we're an 80s band. Because our first song came out on Ice-T's record in 1989.
Okay.
So we're actually an 80s band.
But I was going to say, just kind of thinking about how you've traversed all these decades and the different, more, popular stylings that were going on. Like I said, you had the whole Florida death metal scene in the early 90s, kind of in the late 90s, early 2000s, obviously new metal, and then kind of metalcore. And then now we're in this kind of interesting phase where, guitar playing and musicianship is kind of back. It's not kind of dumbed down metal. And, there's, deathcore and there's all these other subgenres and so forth. And you've kind of traversed all of them. How hard has it been to get on tours? Because, in a day and age where everyone wants to put a label on what you are and where you can fit into this nice tiny little box, body count doesn't fit anywhere. You are an anomaly unto yourselves, and that's what makes it so interesting and great. But when it comes time to getting on a package tour, did you ever experience any problems with that?
You know what? It's amazingly enough, we have never really experienced that. I don't believe, from the booking standpoint. I mean, everyone has welcomed us. When we first started playing, it was before all the Limp Bizkits and everything were actually playing. So we toured with Guns N' Roses, DRI, the hardcore thrash bands. We played with Metallica, those kind of bands. They welcomed us. We played with them. And then we've actually, when we go to Europe and places like that, we played last year. We played with Pharrell. Don't worry, be happy. Whatever song he has, the happy song,
yeah.
Happy. Just
Bobby
playing
McFerrin.
happy. He's not trying to don't worry, be happy. He's just playing happy. So we played with him on a tour. We fit it out here in LA. We played on like a smoke out tour. Weed smokers. We fit into so many different categories, but we don't fit into any category. So that's what's so interesting about it. We're not really we're a metal band, but we're also people think we're a rap band because Ice is in it. They think we're a hardcore band. We fit in so many different categories. So we really haven't experienced that. People put us. We played in Europe with REM. We've opened for REM. We opened for Sheryl Crow. And one time we played a show with us, Sheryl Crow, and the Black Crows. And I said we're body count in the middle of two crows. So it works. It's been working. And we haven't, we fit into every audience. Every audience. I don't know what's so, except for kids. People don't want the kids around us. So. We played. The funniest thing was we played the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame back in Cleveland for some kind of AP awards. AP is something like that. And we went out there and played. There was a lot of kids out there. We did our show, and I at the end of the show, I said, "Thank you for inviting us. We don't get invited out much." Anyway, I thought that was funny.
It was kind of funny, like. I went to go see Ice actually when they did a really random one-off quote-unquote NWA reunion show here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and Ice was the opener, performing his rap career stuff. And it was funny because, like, I'd never got, being in my mid-30s, I never got to see Ice and go to see Ice when he was performing as a rap artist, nor did I get to go see Body Count because just not able to go see those kind of shows back then because you weren't playing all ages shows back then, which is weird.
We were playing clubs. That's basically why.
Yeah, I know. But it's one of those things. Like I remember, a lot of people being at the show, and Ice just kind of making the comment like, "Y'all, how many people know me from SVU?" And most of the crowd cheers, and he goes, "I'm probably fucking y'all up right now with this shit, aren't I?" And I just kind of laughed and looked at everyone kind of reacting to like his music, but not really seemingly knowing it, which was weird given the fact that we're at an NWA show, which is, same sweet spot. But it did make me kind of wonder, and thinking back to that memory before knowing that I was going to be talking with you, do you see that same kind of thing happening when you guys are playing, that people know that Ice is in the band, but maybe don't know the history and the legacy of the band being around for as long as you have and the cultural impact that you've had for so many years?
For the most part, people know. But every once in a while, some kids get backstage and know them from television. And one kid says to me, he says, like, "Hey, that song Cop Killer, it's really bad. When are y'all going to release that?" I'm like, Okay. This is funny, But yeah, there are people that he's been on that show for over
20 years.
20 years. So that's a lifetime, you know what I mean? But and he hasn't really done that many rap records of late. Body Count's been doing records, so we still kept our fan base, you know. But there's still a lot of people that come just to see that, and they see it for the first time. That's why, you know, of the last since Manslaughter came out, you know, the record that I call our kind of our comeback record, we've grabbed a whole new audience. It's like the kids are younger, but they know this band. They know this band is being, you know, of the generation of rock now. You know, we're up there with Ozzy, you know, like, you know, that kind of thing.
You know, I really have enjoyed the reworking, basically, of Colors and 6 in the Morning. How long did it take to work your way through that song to make it a full band version of those songs?
Well, Will was working on that. He was working on and off. He sent me the ideas, and I add a little something. But he worked on that. You know, he's in the studio 24/7, and he lives right near Ice. So Ice would finish the set at night, and he was able to drive to Will, and they kind of worked that out.
I just thought it was kind of interesting, especially the 6 in the Morning demo, because as I kept listening to it when I got the link to the record, and excuse me, again, like, you know, you just see something and you see the title and you don't think too much of it, and I was like, I recognize these vocals, but I don't know why I know these lyrics, like, and I just kept thinking, like, it's a cover of something, but I just don't remember what it is. And then I looked this morning, actually, because I was like, okay, I got to know what this is from, because it's just existed on my phone. And then as I looked it up, I was like, oh, fuck, man, this is an old-ass Ice song. Of course I know this.
Right, of course you do. You know, and the thing about it is, I like hearing that, because I'm an Ice-T fan, you know. I go to Ice-T shows, you know. I sit in the front row, and I know the lyrics, so it was kind of cool for Ice to guest on our record. So I'd consider him, Ice-T coming in to guest star on a Body Count record, because I consider him a member of Body Count. So we have a guest star with one of his songs, Ice-T.
That's a really expensive feature you have for 12 songs. You know, it's you guys have done covers. You guys have a lot of guest musicians on, mainly singers. Obviously, Dave Lombardo played drums on the Ace of Spades cover. Who's a musician that you would like to play with that you haven't? And it doesn't necessarily have to be on a record, just in general, like even in a live setting.
Eventually we're going to put Duff McKagan on a record. He's been my friend for a long time. We'll put him on a record, you know, and that's what I want to do, and I will. And Perry Farrell.
Oh, wow.
And maybe Tom Morello. Those are 3 people I would like to have on my records before I'm done with this thing. And I will try to get them, you know.
This might be an odd question, given the fact of, like I said, how you put out some records for a little while, then you kind of went away, came back, went away, and now you're back. With this kind of, obviously having to go around Ice's really busy schedule of SVU and so forth, you know, how do you think that will add to the longevity of the band and able to make you last longer than a lot of other bands, your contemporaries, because you're not just constantly touring into the ground and having to follow a normal recording tour cycle like a lot of other bands will get into and burn themselves out? Do you think that's added to your longevity?
Yeah, it most definitely has. I mean, we do records when we want to do records. We don't do records because we have to do records. We do records when we feel like doing them. We tour where we want to go. So, yeah, I mean, even if we stop, you know, if we stopped right now and we started doing it 24/7, it'd be, you know, 10 years before we covered all the places we haven't been. So, you know, it adds for the longevity. And we're not burnt out. We're still, you know, we still can move around. We're not, you know, tired. I'll use that word. You know, we still have energy and enthusiasm when we play. If you go to our shows, we're having a great time because I get to hang out with my high school friend, you know, and we get to play. So you can't beat that.
Yeah, I'm hoping that eventually you guys will make your way either back to Chicago and be a couple hours away, or at least come to Michigan, because since you guys have come back, you haven't made it this way yet.
No, we played Chicago, that big festival in Chicago.
Yeah, and I didn't want to pay that much money just to see you guys play a half-hour set.
Oh, that's okay. We played that big. That's when my bass player broke both of his ankles.
Oh God.
He jumped off stage. That's something, you know. He's from the punk era where you can do that kind of stuff, you know.
Yeah.
But we're playing stadiums now. So
I was gonna say, I was like, those stages aren't 2 feet off the ground. They're like 20.
Yeah. Yeah. You really can't do what you did in, you know, CBGBs in a football stadium. So.
You know, you guys are supposed to play an album release show, and obviously that got canceled amongst everything that we're all experiencing currently. And,
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to know with, kind of piggybacking off of the question I just had a couple of seconds ago about, just the busy schedule that everyone will that show be made up and will that affect, is everything right now kind of affecting the timetable of the opportunity you have to kind of hit the road to support this record in a traditional sense? Or is that not really a factor because literally everything's on hold? So like it kind of will open those same windows back up once everything's kind of up and running, or do you not really know yet?
I really don't know, but that show will be made up. I mean, we're going to go there to New York. We sold tickets. Ice lives in New York, so it's not that difficult. We want to play New York, and we will do that. And every other show that on the schedule that we're scheduled to play, we have some shows in Europe the end of June, July. I don't know what's going on with them. If they happen, they're going to happen. If not, we're going to play those shows. We're going to make up every show. So, and then we're going to be on Jimmy Fallon's show with Amy Lee. She was going to sing with us on there. That was canceled also. They're going to reschedule that for us to go on there and play with her. So it's all going to come together.
If you guys are going to do Jimmy Fallon, I would hope maybe the Roots are going to, or at least Questlove or someone does something with you guys. That would be tight.
No, we're just going to play. We're going to go on there and play. We've been on there before. We were the first metal band to ever play on the Tonight Show. Actually, before Metallica, we were the first metal band. But because Ice is in DC, so that's kind of how that works. But we're going to go on there and do it again. I mean, do it with Amy Lee singing.
Here's a fun, interesting thing. As I was listening to the When I'm Gone song and kind of some of the other ones, but more so that one, have you ever thought of kind of, I don't want to say doing an acoustic version, but like, have you ever thought of kind of reworking some of these songs, kind of like a reimagining to any of the songs you've been putting out and do them in a different way?
Well, we did that at rehearsal before. We've done our unplugged Vegas style. We've done that. So you never know. I would like to. It's something to think about.
What is because obviously you were talking earlier about trying to work maybe with Tom Morello, with Duff, with Perry Farrell. Mm-hmm. Is there ever going to be an Ernie C solo record? Ernie C and Friends kind of a record, and if so, what would that sound like? Is there anything
it would sound like?
Good.
It would sound like that. It would sound like those people on it. It might be semi-instrumental. Some, I've been. People have been asking me about that more so of late since this record came out. Since we've been very consistent. So it's something that I might think about doing. Just my guitar playing stuff. Put some, different kind of guitar flavoring on it. But I take time and let Will help me out doing it because he knows the good guitar tones. And that's when I would use the Kemper.
It's just one of those where I didn't know if maybe there's like some random flamenco song you've been sitting on for a while and you're like, I need to get someone like Perry Farrell on this song and just do something really buck wild on some shit and just be like, this is Ernie C, like I never thought I'd hear him, but you're like, just a very diverse person when it comes to some of the songs maybe you're sitting on that aren't Body Count.
Everything, like the first record had more diversity of style on it. These records that we've been doing of late, they're more straight ahead, straight metal. But I tried to do something like that with some Al Di Meola and some John McLaughlin kind of stuff in it, because that's what I grew up on.
Typically this is where I would kind of have you plug socials and tell me what you got going on for the rest of the year, but unfortunately, we're all stuck in our houses, basically.
We're going on tour. I'm going to go on tour of the bedroom. I'm going on tour to the kitchen. Yeah, it's a funny time right now. It's like, what can you do? What can you do? It'll pass, but whenever that happens, everyone has to just maintain and sit still.
Well, Ernie, thank you so much for taking the time. Where can everyone find you on the various social network platforms? Well,
you can find me on Instagram on Ernie ERNIE 4321, and I believe what else? I'm on Facebook of Ernie BC, I believe, and I don't do Twitter. I really don't do Twitter that much.
You're probably not missing much. But
yeah, I don't really.
It's just a direct line to haters, basically.
Yeah, that's why I don't do it. I think don't give them a platform.
Oh fuck, man! I actually this is where I'll end it. So a while ago, I was doing the podcast. I've been doing it for a little over 3 years now, and I did an episode with a pretty big guest, and was pretty proud of it. The guest shared it, which doesn't always happen. And a bunch of people were commenting, like, this fucking, like, this dude, like, he sucks, he didn't ask this, he didn't ask this, he didn't ask this. And, I had kind of stayed in contact with the person after the fact, and they were like, oh, it was a really good interview, you actually knew, like, stuff about me, and you got why we were doing things and so forth. Like, he was really stoked on it, which is why he shared it. And to see so many people shitting on me for something that I felt really good about, and I just was, like, really bummed. And I just happened at that time to going back and listening to the Final Level podcast. And, Ice and Benzo were saying something about basically, just haters will always hate up. No one's going to talk shit about someone below you or whatever. And so, just don't let it get to you. And so, like, I was like, I really needed this today. Thanks, Ice, for the daily game. It actually hit me when I really needed it. And then he was just like, yeah, man, you got to remember, haters don't hate up. Or haters don't hate down, haters hate up. Like, no one will talk shit about someone below them, so you must be doing something right. And it just felt really good to kind of get that reaffirmation. And it was one of those things, like, I took a screenshot and I keep it in my phone, so sometimes when someone will inevitably make a shitty comment about something, it's like, they will. Yeah, and I have to constantly, like, it still is hard because I don't have as thick a skin as some of the other people who have been doing this for 20, 30, 40 years. So I'm slowly getting there, but it's one of those, like, I'll look at that when I start getting a little bit down on myself, and I'm just like, you know what, man, fuck it. Like, do better. You get the opportunity, and then you do it.
The thing about that real quick is, like, okay, I look at the reviews on the album. They're like, great, it's great. Yeah, we love it. Blah, 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 blah. And there's one guy says, you guys suck. I hate you so much. And that's the one you remember.
Absolutely. It's so weird.
That's what hate carries a lot of weight. That's my new thing. Hate, it will stick with you. All the positive stuff, they can hear all the positive stuff. And that one hater just try to eliminate all the positive stuff that's been said up to that point.
Well, I mean, you guys cover that on the new record.
Yeah,
that very theme, like, the hate is real. I mean, the
hate is real. And it even goes back to talk shit, get shot.
Absolutely. About, Yeah. So, once again, thank you very much for taking the time. Have been a fan of Body Count basically, I'm a product of the MTV generation, so I remember seeing the videos way back in the early 90s, living out on the East Coast. I'm from Delaware originally, so I remember, you guys were a big integral part of just a lot of cross culture, because back then in the early 90s, there weren't really genres. It was a lot of, I guess, alternative. So I remember Body Count kind of being this thing where it's like, I like rock and I like metal, but this isn't quite that, because I also like hip hop because I'm getting into, the daily thing of like 120 minutes, MTV raps and stuff like that, and living on the East Coast in the beginning of kind of that New Jack Swing style stuff of like Boyz II Men and all that kind of stuff out in the East Coast and East Coast rap. And so it was just kind of one of those where it was like, you guys were like the perfect mashup for me of like everything I kind of was starting to get into as a youth. So I blame you guys for how I turned out.
Oh, it turned out pretty good, I believe.
Well, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and hopefully we will see Body Count on the road soon enough, and I'll actually be able to finally come see you guys.
Cool. You take care, okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
So that was my chat with Ernie C, of Body Count, the legendary guitar player of Body Count, Ernie fucking C, on this podcast. It was kind of funny, so I have the running joke on Twitter and so forth, foiled by Coil hashtag, that a lot of times Doc Coil will post episodes, and they will be of guests that we also have talked to, and we just haven't released the episode, and I'm like, fuck. Because then, the thing that always sucks sometimes with some of these interviews is some of the things said are kind of the same, or you might ask something similar, and you're like, oh man, it's totally going to sound like I didn't do my due diligence. And, at this point, Doc always, he put out his Ernie episode, and I sent him the thing. I was like, man, it's really interesting that Ernie got to some of the same stories he was telling on your show as mine, but we got to those stories completely different ways. And I think that's kind of the fun thing sometimes about these podcasts. And Ernie is one, I thought we were only going to get maybe 20 minutes or so, and as we're just bullshitting, he was just like, oh man, I'm good. I ain't got nothing. And was down to chat. And it's like, that doesn't happen very often either. So I mean, Ernie needs to have his own fucking podcast. Let's just say that. I mean, one of my favorite stories, and I wish I would have heard Doc's first to go more in detail on this. He was so connected to all the music scenes and so forth, and I'm totally blanking a name, but I remember it's totally the wrong fucking person, so I'm just going to throw a random name out there, and I know I'm wrong, but it was like, they were talking, he was like, yeah, he used to hang out with all these dudes and Chuck Berry, and then he was like, wait, how the fuck did you know Chuck Berry? And he was like, oh, well, we used to live in the house together. And you're like,
Wait, what? Back
of course
up.
You did.
Yeah.
Of course you did. That is the story. Like, oh, and then you find out it wasn't like, oh, we weren't like living in a house. We were squatting in this house. Just like, okay, dude, of course. Like, that's sure. That is something.
We didn't have a mortgage or pay rent or anything. It's just a house we found.
I think I might retract my statement. I don't remember who I said it about previously, but I think Ernie C is the most interesting man in hardcore metal.
Yeah, that would be definitely hard to dispute, I would think.
But I would love to have Ernie back on. Again, dude, just like I said, can tell stories, has lived multiple lives over his time on this earth. And again, if you haven't checked out Carnivore, I don't know how it's not already on your top of 2020 list. It's the only shining thing happening right now in 2020 is, Body Count's new record out, and you can enjoy it. It's so good. And I think Will Putney, as we have said countless times, just brings out some magic with those guys. I think as of today when we're recording, another new Ghost Inside song came out, and everyone is seeing the really aggressive song that I was talking about a while ago, or at least to Dan. There's stuff on this Ghost Inside record that I was just like, wow, that's interesting. Like, you don't usually hear that on a hardcore record or whatever. And very much like on this, there's stuff on this Body Count record and all the Body Count records that Will has worked on. It's not stuff you hear on these records. So there's just this intangible thing that Will has. And if you think the Will gushing is going to stop anytime soon, we got a Brendan Murphy from Counterpart/End episode coming up where we talk about Will some more. So 2020, year of Will Putney. We'll just say that.
Definitely. Dude's literally been on fire.
Yes. Speaking of on fire, I saw a beer the other day. It is a North Peak, and I'm not... Sorry, North Peak, if you listen to this. I'm typically not a fan of their beer. Very hit or miss for me. Very more miss than hit. But I saw a milkshake IPA, which everyone knows those have been my go-tos. And this is a sweet, creamy coconut milkshake IPA. So the expectations are pretty high for this for me. I have no idea how it's going to taste, so I'm going to take my first sip of this here. Ooh. I don't really get any coconut flavor personally. But I definitely get that like milkshake IPA, like just a straight up milkshake IPA flavor. Kind of sweet, and then like the bitterness of the IPA on the back end. Not bad. I'm glad I didn't buy 2 cans of this like I initially thought I was going to, because I was like, this is going to be the best beer ever, and I'm going to want more. I'm glad I got my 1 can. It's not bad. I'm glad I didn't spend almost $17 for a 4-pack of it.
There you go.
Still drinking your tea?
No, I drank all of it. It was like, I did, 12 ounces on the Keurig, so like 18 ounces of tea. So I won't be going to bed anytime soon, but, you gotta
get that Earl Grey.
Absolutely. I love Earl Grey, dude, so much.
I like Earl Sweatshirt. For any hip-hop people out there. Anyway, wrapping up this episode, if you would like to keep up with Body Count, you can find them at Body Count Official on Facebook and Instagram, Twitter at Body Counts, and if you would like to keep up with Ernie, you can find him on Instagram at Ernie C 4321, and Facebook is something kind of similar. It's just use Instagram. That's the easiest way to keep up with him. As we've mentioned multiple times, Carnivore is out now. Great record. If this doesn't end up being in your top, records of this year, then I don't know why it wouldn't. Maybe send us an email, BREWtallyspeaking@gmail.com, and tell me why you don't like this record and why it's not in your top, because I will tell you that you're wrong. It'll just be an automatic reply. You will send that, and then before you're even finished and you send it to us, it'll just come back and say you're wrong. Can't send message because it can't send incorrect information. It'll
just be a picture of Donald Trump pointing at you and go, wrong!
Yeah. And Dan will tell you where he can be found on the internet.
I can be found on Twitter at DiscussMetalDan.
Wrong.
On Facebook, Daniel Terry. Can also be found at DiscussMetalDan@gmail.com. You can check out my other podcast, Discography Discussion, at DiscussMetal.com. Maybe you guys are noticing a trend there.
You have a lot of podcasts. That's what I noticed.
Too many.
And if you would like to keep up with this podcast, simple enough, Brew Speak Pod, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Check us out on YouTube. There are a lot of videos. It's an easier way for some people to check out this podcast. We do post videos where they apply. Some of our Instagram lives have been going up over there. Man, that'd be a fun one, is Ernie and on Instagram Live. Man, I would just let that dude go. I'd just be like, hey, Ernie, it's Wednesday, go.
Nice.
Tell me about a Wednesday on Lollapalooza. And we also want to take some time to thank our sponsors. If you were able to support our sponsors during this tough time, that would be greatly appreciated. Every little bit helps everywhere it can. Let's start off with the Bean Bastard. Local Buffalo, New York business, 2-man operation. Head to thebeanbastard.com. Get some delicious coffee, the Sproton pack, the mom blend, the dad blend. They just kill it. And this coming from someone who's not really the biggest coffee drinker, but everything I've had is really good. So take that for what it's worth, because I just had a beer that I said admittedly, I'm not a fan of the brewery that makes it, so, I mean, it is what it is. But follow them on Facebook and Instagram at The Bean Bastard. Also, keep up with our other sponsor, On Point Pomade. Use our code BSP15. Get 20% off your total purchase order when you head over to onpointpomade.com. Keep up with all their going-ons on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at On Point Pomade. Again, use our code BSP15 when you're on the website. Keep your hair and beard looking on point. And lastly but not leastly, Rockabilly.com. I want to thank them again for coming on in the last month and a half, 2 months or so. They are just killing it. I swear, everybody we have on, there is something from that band. Like I'm loving this talk shit, get shot V-neck. It's just basically the old school body count, old English style logo with a gun pointing at you with bullet holes all around it.
Nice.
They have another one with an AK-47 that just says enter the dark side. The Bloodlust cover. I mean, they got a lot of cool shit. If you're a fan of body count, if you're a fan of rock, metal, hardcore, pop culture stuff, head on over to rockabilly.com. They have over 500,000 items for sale. There's going to be something you like, and you don't have to worry about the integrity of the products because they're 100% guaranteed and officially licensed through the bands. So not only are you supporting Rockabilly when you shop, but you're also supporting the bands. So it's a win-win for everyone involved. And if you're a first-time user, you'll see an ad pop up when you go onto the site, save you 10% off your total purchase. And want to thank all of our sponsors for helping us out during these tough times, and go support them if you can. And once again, just want to thank Tom Smith of the Acacia Strain for doing that track that you hear to start off every episode, starting with last week's episode with Joey Bradford of The Used. That song rips. A couple people online have been saying they really dig it, that it's heavy as fuck. We agree. Want to thank Tom. If you would like him to work on something for you, do some mixing, some editing, whether it be for a song or for a podcast, send him a DM on Instagram at tsmith678. Let him know we sent you. And for the BREWtally Speaking Podcast, I am John.
And I am Dan.
We will talk to you all next time.
Oh, that fucking sucked. Shao Kahn, what'd you think?
That was pathetic.
Yeah. Coach, what'd you think?
Fucking embarrassing!
Okay. I mean, I knew it was gonna fucking suck, but I think those guys were a little rude. Austin Powers?
How about new?
Okay, I thought we were going to get the Austin Powers vote. We did not. John, use that for your podcast. It fucking sucks. But you knew what you were getting into. It's your own fault. It will result in less listens. You're going to see a decline in listeners if you start the show with that. You're going to see 30 seconds in, the number will plummet. And I will be there at the bottom of the plummet saying, I fucking told you. Don't use this fucking riff. It sucks. But it's yours.